In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
It got up to like $68,000. My heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
Wake up, America.
Wake up, Maggie, I think I got something to say to you. It's late September and I really should be back at school. I know I keep you amused, but I feel I'm being used.
Of America. I want you to love the United States of America too. Now rest assured, Dr. A will not try to put his brain into your head. I will, however, motivate you to think and to use the analytical part of your brain that very few people want to use because it requires actual effort. It requires actual work. Now, as you know, back in 2008, I created a new political science course for my UCLA students. It was called Presidential Politics and Homeland Security, Poli-Sci 149. Did you remember that, right, Louis?
I definitely remember that.
Okay. On day one of class, I posed 7 questions to my students, and during the duration of that course there in Westwood, I motivated them to think analytically about each of them using that rational thought process. These 7 concepts were also the topics they could choose from to write their term paper. I always encouraged my students to adopt any political perspective that they desired as we considered and actually debated the different possibilities. I'm hoping that the 7 questions will force you also in the listening audience to use the analytical part of your brain and to provoke you to think rationally as well. So let's take a look at the 7 questions. Here's the first one that I posed to my students. Is your personal freedom a critical component of homeland security? What's your response to that, Lou?
I think that that's true, and I think it's true the other way around as well. I think that homeland security is a critical component of my personal security in a major way.
I agree with that. Now, the second question is sort of a segue from that. Who protects your individual liberty and your sovereignty as an American citizen, Lou?
Any number of people, including myself.
You have an obligation to protect your own individual liberty and sovereignty?
Absolutely. That's my job. That's what we the people are all about, right?
Who else would be involved? You said there were several that you thought had to be involved in protecting sovereignty
Number one,
and
the
individual
president.
liberty.
He's the commander-in-chief. That's his job.
You know, very, very astute. That's his number one job, Lou, is to protect the citizens of the United States of America, which that is the nation. If you're a politician and you engage in poor domestic policy, that will result in the possibility of you not getting reelected. That's the penalty you pay for poor domestic policy. The president, if you engage in poor foreign policy, that quite often leads to dead Americans. And that's what's happening right now with this Iran nuke deal, and what's happening with ISIS in the Middle East, and all these supposed refugees that are fleeing those war-torn areas of the Middle East for Germany and Europe. They're coming to the United States. That's what's happening right now. These are the results of a poor foreign policy by the Barack Obama administration. And I keep telling you all the time that I don't call him names. I accurately describe the man. He is an Islamo-communist. If you look at the history of his upbringing and you look at his decisions and his statements, what he's done, you have to come to that conclusion. An Islamo-communist, and they're pretty much the same. The ideology is pretty much the same. Brutal, totalitarian ideology of total control over human behavior and thought. That's just exactly what it is. There really is no God involved, other than the God of Marxism and the God of Islam, which is that supposed prophet that they all worship.
Well,
am I being too harsh on that?
No. Well, you've said to me quite a few times that Islam is an ideology.
Political ideology.
Yes.
Exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's a political ideology. It's a totalitarian political ideology that's equates to total, brutal control over all human behavior and all human thought. It's simply masquerading as a religion. And if it is a religion at all, and I've heard lots of people say this, it's a religion of warfare, a religion of constant conflict. When they say they're the religion of peace, they're only saying that because if they eventually take over the entire world in this caliphate, then they believe there will be peace. Because if you don't do what they want you to do, they'll cut your head off, or they'll burn you alive, or they'll bury you in water, and you'll drown. That's the only peace that they know is them at the top and you at the bottom as subservient slaves. And in my lifetime, I'm not ever going to allow that to happen. I think there's enough Americans, good, patriotic, courageous Americans that will stand up and fight that tooth and nail when it comes to it. And I believe that's actually going to happen. I think it's on the way. What do you think about that?
I think that it's frightening that it probably is on the way. I think that any of us that have watched world events throughout our lifetime, they're of an age, my generation, or older. We've seen scary things in scary times, but I don't remember any scarier, or I don't remember any that I felt were more tenuous, more teetering on the edge of something's about to happen, and that includes the Cold War.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I was interacting today on social media, on which I have many Facebook fanatics and Twitter trolls that attack me on a routine basis like they do you. And this one lady reached out, and we were talking about the syndrome that's happening right now. Americans with their head in the sand, and we have people out there that want to brutally murder us. And then we talk about the Arab Spring, and that things have become, and you use the word tenuous, a lot more tenuous in the world after that alleged Arab Spring, and then it could get worse. And the advice I put on the Facebook thread there was, they said, "What should we do, Dr. A?" So, well, keep your powder dry and your weapons ready, because World War III has begun. I've been saying that for about 5 years now. We are in World War III. They know it, but we don't know it. Some of us know it, but the majority of us don't know it. And World War III has begun. And you know what, folks? The fighting may well be in our streets amongst us as citizens. In fact, you know what? It's all no security in bliss. You know, if you can't have it. I mean, the founding fathers, Dr. Franklin himself said, if you willingly give up some of your liberty, your cherished liberty that God gave you and that they were protecting when they created the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, if you give up some of that liberty, a modicum of liberty for some small amount of temporary security, and then Franklin said, you don't deserve either, and you'll have neither. And so you have to, America is advanced citizenship. It's hard. It's going to make you work for it. Our democratic constitutional republic is not easy. It is, in fact, an experiment.
I'd like
230 years old.
Yeah, I'd like for you to back up. You said America is advanced citizenship. And I think that that's a really good point, because there are so many countries, and often you talk about Twitter trolls, we hear, oh, well, life is so much better in this European country or that European country. There's no real participation in anything by the citizenry because they are guaranteed everything.
When they tell you that, here's what you say. Dr. A wants to roll the bullshit flag up the flagpole. It's a crock. They all want to come here, and you live in these. I mean, Bernie Sanders himself, feel the burn. That guy that's now the front runner on the Democratic ticket. It's interesting. They've got on the Democratic ticket, they've got a socialist curmudgeon that's leading the ticket, and they got a sociopath communist that is the front runner in the minds of the individual primary, which we'll talk about next week.
I'm confused.
They got nothing to offer. Nothing.
I'm confused, Dr. A. Which one is which?
Well, there you go. They're both. At least Bernie doesn't lie to you. He tells you what he wants to do, but we know socialism doesn't work. It works in the faculty lounge and it works in hell. That's the only place it works. So they've got nothing to offer. I think right now, if you look at there was 17 people that were running for the Republican nomination. Now there's 16. I guess Governor Perry, former Texas Governor Perry, dropped out. It's a really, really wide open, divergent field of people, and they're a good group of candidates. I know you and Stacy and JD, you don't like Donald Trump, and I keep telling you he's got some real value, and I tell you why. And that I believe he will not eventually get the nomination, but he could. If these dominoes keep falling in his direction, Lou, he will be the GOP nominee. I'm telling you.
You keep saying that we don't like him, and some people that I know really don't like him, but that doesn't, I don't fall into that category of I hate Donald Trump. But I've told you that. I don't.
Well, a lot of people in the Republican Party, mainly if you want to call them the establishment, they hated Ronald Reagan's guts. And a lot of those people were in the Bush camp. They could not stand him because he was for something that they were supposed to be for.
Well,
they're supposed to be conservatives.
I remember why he chose Bush as his running mate, and that had a lot to do with it.
Why? Tell my class why he chose George Bush to be his running mate.
Because the delegates, there were so many delegates that were so pro-Bush and wanted George Bush wanted to vote for him at the the Reagan nomination was really kind of a delegate coup a little bit, and it was more about the delegates at the convention than it was anything else.
Well,
right?
he rounded out the ticket to get the delegates and the votes from the various, Texas being one of them.
Right.
But he also shut Bush up. But being a vice president is basically a dead end job. Used to be. You look at 230 years of the country; it's a dead end job. It has changed over the years, so that now it's almost like a stepping stone to greater notoriety and power in politics. But in the beginning, it was a nothing job. It meant nothing unless the guy died. I mean, you are a heartbeat away from the presidency.
I remember that being a very exciting year, and one that came out on the side of the voters and the people. That 1980, and that nomination, and
Reagan,
the vice
Reagan
presidency
used Bush a lot more than any other vice president.
Right.
And in fact, when you look at it, George Bush did a good job as vice president. You know, his job as president was a little bit less than that, but he did it. He was involved. Reagan had him do certain things. He was the guy that ran the war on drugs, so I was involved in that with him, and he did some good things. So you know, you're right about that, and we'll talk about the election. Isn't there a campaign next week, GOP presidential debate?
And we have an invisible primary to talk about on the show next week.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next week. But let's get back to national security here. My doctoral dissertation was the chain link theory of the Soviet collapse. I looked at why the Soviet Union collapsed. And when you do a doctoral dissertation, it has to be unique. Nobody can have ever done it before. So the idea that I came up with was, since I believe the Soviet Union was going to last forever, I believe that when they actually collapsed on Christmas Day in 1991, it was an accident, a political accident. So I took that stance on it, and I decided to investigate the collapse of the Soviet Union as a political accident using aviation accident investigation theory, the chain link theory of aviation accidents. You look at an aviation accident. Let's first talk about natural science. In natural science, A can cause B. One variable can cause the one outcome. If I take water and I heat it to 212 degrees, it boils every time, unless I'm up in 8,000 feet. So A can cause B. Complex human relations, that's never the case. One variable cannot be the cause of the result. It's always 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 12 variables that went into that final outcome, that final result. When you look at an aviation accident, it's never just one thing. Like the accident that occurred in Washington, D.C. You might remember this, Lou. You're old enough to remember this. No offense intended. Palm 90, Air Florida Flight 90, crashed into the 14th Street Bridge out of Washington, Reagan on takeoff, went to the bottom of the Potomac, killed a whole bunch of people, Air Florida Flight 90. There was the famous picture of that one flight attendant bobbing up. She somehow escaped, and she's now in this frigid, cold water, and they have a helicopter above her. They lift her out. She's got her arm in the horse collar, and the TV cameras are looking at her, and you can see the trauma, the intense trauma in her eyes, and she slipped through that and went back into the water. And that's when that one off-duty fireman, bless his heart, jumped in and saved her life. Well, when you analyze that as an accident, there was not just one thing. The snow on the airplane didn't cause that accident. There were many, many things that caused the accident. Air Florida at that time didn't do ice training. Why should they? They live in the Sunshine State. Well, that's ridiculous. You get to 14,000 feet, you're no longer in the Sunshine State. They had the anti-ice equipment off when you listen to black box recordings. It was off. They backed out of the gate using reverse. Can't do that. That made snow and ice go up into the intake of the engine, and it froze over the EPR gauge. The left side of the airplane was de-iced. It was shift change. The guy left, went home. The guy that came on to take his place assumed the whole airplane was de-iced. The right side hadn't been de-iced, so it was covered with snow on the right side. As they taxied for takeoff, other pilots looked at that airplane, and on their black box voice recording said, "Oh my God, look at the stuff on that airplane." But nobody told the guy. So they took off. As they're rolling down the runway, a naval aviator, former naval aviator in the right seat, it was his leg. He's flying. He brings the power up, gets to 3.24 on that 2.4 indication on that EPR gauge. They start rolling down the runway. He immediately says to the captain, something's wrong, something's wrong. Captain says, no, look, EPR 3.24. Kept rolling down the runway. They lumbered down the runway, Lou. They finally got airborne, and immediately they were in buffet. And then they stalled several seconds later. And the guy in the right seat didn't go to max power until 1 3/4 of a second before they hit the 14th Street Bridge. So all of those things went into that accident. Any one of them, if they would have stopped it at that point, would have stopped that accident. So that's how I investigated the Soviet Union's collapse as a political accident. Here's one of the major reasons the Soviet Union collapsed. It was the overt presence and the insidious pressure of 143 different nationalities combined within the borders of one nation. So my provocative question to my class and to you, Lou, and the listeners, could too much diversity cause America to collapse as a free nation? What do you think about that question?
So I think it's a really interesting question, and I don't know that I'd put it in the category of too much inability or the lack of desire to assimilate. You know, people immigrate with an I with the intent to assimilate. If they don't, they're immigrating with an E, and they really have, for whatever reason, not that big of a desire to be part of your culture, your country, and regardless of what some people may think, we do have, there is an American culture.
That's very astute analysis. And in the old days, when they always say this country was built on immigrants. To a certain extent, that's true. But those immigrants that came here legally, I use that word on purpose, legally, they wanted to emulate the American life. They wanted to learn English. They wanted to get ensconced in the American way of life as quickly as they could. They knew that was the pathway to a successful life for themselves, their family, and their posterity. So that's what they did. Today, with the liberals in charge of this, and the cultural Marxists, which have invaded the Democratic Party, they want nothing to do with that. I'm here to tell you, Dr. Ray's going to tell us right now, contrived and forced multiculturalism does not work. It's the classic recipe for both political instability and for civil war. And the cultural Marxists know this, and that's why they are using that as part of their war, political correctness and all the other weapons in their arsenal to try and get the United States transformed and ready and ripe for a Marxist revolution. That's exactly what's happening right now. I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, good, and I think that's a perfect spot for us to take a quick break. So
Okie-doke.
Let's do a couple of station promos, and we will be back in just a minute.
This is JD.
And this is Stacy.
Join us Tuesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern for Game On. Remember,
lock up the children and the old folks.
Game On, the home of liberservative conservatism.
Where no one is safe and no one is spared. Not even the hosts.
Oh, that was supposed to be a spin cycle. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. We love you anyway. Right round, baby.
Self-monitoring
right
Ebola
anyway.
radio strikes again.
Anyway.
Anybody see the host monkey?
Today.
Where's the host monkey? Where's the host monkey? For God's sake, I need an antidote. Just
Anyway,
do your
this
rant. Let's
week's
pop
spin
out of the
cycle
segment.
has to do with
Find us on Twitter at JD and Stacy.
You're listening to K98Talk.com. Tune in to America Off the Rails with Rowdy Rick Robinson every Saturday at 7:30 a.m. Central Daylight Time on iHeartRadio, K98Talk.com, and Blog Talk Radio. Rick, a conservative who's not afraid to say what's on his mind, tackles the issues that threaten to derail our nation. So join him every Saturday morning at 7:30 to get your daily dose of the truth as he tries to keep America from coming off the rails.
Speaking of which, we're back.
I'm here. I've got a question. We're talking about this. This is a very provocative one. Will the United States of America survive until 2025?
I think it's up to us, Doc.
Well, we've got. We just talked about immigration, illegal immigration, normal immigration, for lack of a better way to put that. And now our president wants to bring in 10,000 Muslim refugees who are fleeing war-torn Middle East. You notice he's not bringing in any Christians. I wonder why that would be. What do you think of that? Do his actions give him away, Lou? I think they do.
Well, I think that's a really good point, because there was a German family here that was, you can hear me, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. This, it doesn't look like it on the deck for the moment, so sorry about that. But there was a German family here that was claiming a religious exception, that wanted to stay here, and they were going to have them deported. I think that they didn't, but it was public outrage that caused it to not happen. So I think that's a kind of a really good contrast there.
I know you are not fond of, I may get into this a little bit later, of the hyphenated Americans, African Americans, whatever you want to talk about. I just think that's wrong. I think if you're, this kind of segues into what we were talking about, that salad bowl we all want to get in the United States and become one big identity as Americans. I don't know the Italian Americans when they came over. I didn't know lots of those guys that came over considered themselves Italian American. They wanted to become Americans as quickly as they could. Now you got Black Lives Matter, which is nothing but a front for the communists and the Islamists who are funneling money to them and giving them talking points, teaching them how to protest. In fact, I think they just offered one of the founders of Black Lives Matter a teaching gig at Yale University. I mean, I'm appalled by that. What is he going to teach our children at all at Yale University? Can you answer that question for me?
No, I don't. I wouldn't want to have a child in college or Yale University or anywhere else right now, because it's kind of scary. You don't know what they're learning, right? I mean, I have friends that send their kids to Liberty because it's the only place that they know of that they're not going to get indoctrinated into, a way of thinking that is foreign to them and that they don't really believe in. So, yeah, I mean, even there are a lot of schools where you wouldn't necessarily expect that kind of indoctrination, but you get it anyway.
Well, I just don't understand. I know what's going on. And different universities I've taught at, 6 different universities. The majority of our tenured and non-tenured professors are mega liberal, and probably the vast amount of those are cultural Marxists. And whether they are wittingly or unwittingly engaging in that, they are. And, you have the one big thing now is Black Lives Matter versus white identity politics, and it seems to be boiling over. I don't even know what to talk about with white identity politics. I mean, I grew up in Southern California and then moved all around the country because my dad was, a chief petty officer in the submarine service, the Navy. We lived everywhere. And I never really, when I was growing up, saw people as black or white or Jews or morons or Mormons or whatever. None of that stuff. And I consider myself an American, and I think that's what we should strive to do. But when there's one way, and I think it was Governor Lamb that put up I think it was like 6 or 8 different ways to destroy the United States of America, and one of them was to have the government. First of all, they have to want to destroy the country and change it, fundamentally transform it, which we have right now. And one of them was that you encourage multiculturalism, you encourage different languages. You can't do that. We will not survive till 2025. English is the universal language of aviation, Lou. If I go to Shanghai or if I go to Greece, in the tower, they have to speak English to me. Now, you might have a problem with them speaking Athenian type of English and me speaking Southern California surfer boy English, and we might miscommunicate, but the universal language of aviation is English no matter where you go on this planet. So why can't the universal language of the United States of America be English? That issue, the domestic issue, has perplexed me for a long, long time. I know why the Democrats don't want to do that, because they're just pandering to people for votes. But we have got to stand up courageously. Those sheep we talked about last week have to move away from sheepdom into the realm of sheepdogism and stand up courageously and heroically to fight for the survival of the United States of America, or we will not see 2025 as the United States of America. We might end up breaking, I've been saying this before, we might break up into 3 or 4 different nations. I don't know that we would balkanize like they did in the Soviet Union, where they had all these small little countries that, evolved from the breakup of the Soviet Union, because we have too many states that are too closely aligned with one another. They would just form their own little confederacy. I like that word, confederacy. So you might have 3 or 4 different states that once upon a time used to be the United States of America. You'll have 3 or 4 different ones. And I think I can see a clear path for that happening.
Well,
go ahead.
On one of those regional separations, when they decided that, the historical 13 Confederate states have really not the same rights as the other states, and that should perpetually continue for for the rest of time. The Supreme Court, of course, said that's not true. They've suffered enough. They have a right to equal protection like every other state does. So you can't single out those 13 states any longer. That time has passed. But
I'm from Southern California, so you probably won't call me a Yankee or a Confederate. But I think if you look at the history of that, of course, the Civil War was at its base, undergirding foundation was about states' rights. Yes, one of the variables of states' rights was an economic system that included slavery in it, forced labor, and that's heinous. I agree with that. But the 13 states of the former Confederacy were absolutely right about state sovereignty and states' rights. And we're seeing more of that nowadays with the call for the states' convention, the Article 5 convention, which I think might happen one day.
Well, nobody ever looks back at Lincoln's speeches where he actually agreed with the 13 states and with the idea of, if you're not happy with your government, then you should feel the right to recreate it. But everything in context, right? So maybe he believed that in one context, but not necessarily in all.
Well,
or maybe
it's not necessarily about happiness. One of your heroes is John Locke, and
yes.
And he basically, in his second treatise on government, legitimized revolution. And the legitimacy that's given to a revolution is when the federal government, which is based on, any government is based on the consent of the people, limited government based on the consent of the people, and you give them power, you give them your power, you trust them with that political power that belongs to you, but you're giving it to them as your representative, and you have to take care of that political power that they've loaned to you. If you break the fiduciary trust of the people have the right. No, they not only have the right, Lou, they have the obligation to tear down that government and create another one that will do the proper job with that political power that they've been entrusted with, and respect the fiduciary trust that was given to them by the people. So he said that it's a right and an obligation to do that. So the United States may not survive till 2025, and there's just so many variables to talk about. That'd be an entire 2-hour show right there. How could this happen? But I'm of the opinion that if we don't stand up and fight for our country, like Minutemen, patriots, I'm talking about true conservative type patriots, we're going to lose a nation. So that kind of segues into the next question that I would ask my students, and here it is. From a homeland security perspective, does it really matter who our president is, Lou?
Indeed, it does.
Can you expound on that for us?
I can not only expound on that, I can play a clip, but let me set the clip up a little bit, right? So we remember the Reagan years, the prosperity,
fondly,
the prosperity, and not just the prosperity, but the feeling of safety, because we felt like our commander-in-chief was really protecting us, and there was a good reason for that. It wasn't just in his language. It was in his actions. And by contrast, we are not feeling prosperous and we are not feeling safe because we have the exact, what you called 180 in the White House as our commander-in-chief now. So that is a setup for people to just listen to a little bit of back to back, compare and contrast that goes back 50 years between Ronald Reagan and Barack Obama.
Let's set the record straight. There's no argument over the choice between peace and war, but there's only one guaranteed way you can have peace, and you can have it in the next second. Surrender. Admittedly, there's a risk in any course we follow other than this, but every lesson of history tells us that the greater risk lies in appeasement. And this is the specter our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement. And it gives no choice between peace and war, only between fight or surrender.
Consulted with Congress throughout this process. I am confident that as Commander-in-Chief I have the authorities to engage in the acts that we are conducting currently. As our strategy develops, we will continue to consult with Congress, and I do think that it'll be important for Congress to weigh in. But I don't want to put the cart before the horse. We don't have a strategy yet.
7 o'clock this evening, Eastern Time, air and naval forces of the United States launched a series of strikes against the headquarters, terrorist facilities, and military assets that support Muammar Gaddafi's subversive activities. Colonel Gaddafi is not only an enemy of the United States. His record of subversion and aggression against the neighboring states in Africa is well documented and well known. He has ordered the murder of fellow Libyans in countless countries. He has sanctioned acts of terror in Africa, Europe, and the Middle East, as well as the Western Hemisphere. And for us to ignore, by inaction, the slaughter of American civilians and American soldiers, whether in nightclubs or airline terminals, is simply not in the American tradition.
I want to start by repeating what I've said since the beginning. This will not be quick. This is a long-term campaign. ISIL is opportunistic and it is nimble. In many places in Syria and Iraq, including urban areas, it's dug in among innocent civilian populations. It will take time to root them out. And doing so must be the job of local forces on the ground with training and air support from our coalition. As with any military effort, there will be periods of progress, but there are also going to be some setbacks.
And make no mistake about it, this attack was not just against ourselves or the Republic of Korea. This was the Soviet Union against the world and the moral precepts which guide human relations among people everywhere. It was an act of barbarism, born of a society which wantonly disregards individual rights and the value of human life and seeks constantly to expand and dominate other nations.
Now, what would have been really fantastic would be if I were able to find something from Barack Obama that would have matched Reagan's statement after that last statement that he made about the North Korean plane that was shot down by the Soviet Union, which I'm sure you remember. But there was none. There attack after attack, incident after incident, and no comment from the White House.
He only comments when it is something that will further his talking points, his agenda. I told you he is one of them. And as I've stated previously, America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, our longevity as an independent individual freedom nation, it will be because we destroyed ourselves from within, or the sheepdogs allowed us to be destroyed from within. A nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it will not survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, and this is what Cicero taught us, because he is known and carries his banner openly. But the traitor moves amongst us freely within those gates. His sly whispers rustling through all the alleys are heard in the halls of government itself. The traitor appears not to be a traitor, Lou. He speaks in accents that are familiar to us, familiar to his victims. And he wears their face. He wears their arguments. He appeals to their baseness that lies deep within the hearts of those men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of the city. He infects the body politic so that it can no longer resist. A murderer is less to fear in the United States today. The traitor is the plague that we have to be worried about. And when you combine those individuals with both witting and unwitting accomplices, a traitor who is also falsely hyped as a hero of a nation or the savior of a certain demographic, that individual, Lou, is the most dangerous man of all. You may not have heard this yet, but your president just got approved for a second. Right there, what do you think?
You cut out. My president just got approved for a second
Nobel Peace Prize.
I'd have to ask, what has he done to further peace?
Well, the people that give away, I think that's out of Oslo, Norway, they give away that Nobel Peace Prize, they're communists. He's one of them. He's done nothing. He's done nothing but foment revolution and the plague of Islam and Marxism on the world. And it's already here. Anybody that's listening out there, it's already here. They have infiltrated every sector of your country, people. You may not even know that they are there. Those are the unwitting accomplices that are buried in their head in the sand. They don't want to know what's going on. They're here and they're trying to destroy you. And they're not going to ask you if you're a Democrat or are you a Republican, or are you an independent when they kill you and cut your head off? It's happening right now, folks. You better be scared. You better realize that the United States of America is in jeopardy of collapse, and it's coming sooner than you think.
And that's where you stop and you step back and you say, well, what is the evidence of that? Well, there have been quite a few attacks, people who've actually been beheaded or shot, and the White House turns around and calls it workplace violence. And what reason would there be for them doing that?
Because he's a liar, just like Hillary Clinton. He's engaging in taqiyya. As a Muslim, he can lie to further the goals of Islam. He is a liar. Do you need any other analogy than that? He is a liar. He's lying to you, and he's a communist trying to destroy the United States of America. You know, our government is often called a democracy. It's really more of a democratic constitutional republic. But it is called that because it's in the hands of the many, supposedly, not of the few. Our laws, when you look at them in perpetuity, our laws secure equal justice for all in our private disputes. And our public opinion welcomes and honors talent in every kind of achievement. I don't care what color you are or whether you're a man or a woman. I don't care. If you deserve to be there, you deserve to be there. Every kind of achievement is recognized in the United States of America, not for any secular reason, but on the grounds of excellence alone. And as we give free play to all in our public life, so we carry the Spirit into our daily relations with one another. We're not angry. This is how we're supposed to be. We're not angry with our neighbor if he does what he likes or if he's successful, nor do we put our sour looks on at him or look unpleasant to him when he is successful. We are open and friendly in our private relations. This is the majority of the American people, the sheep I was telling you about last week. We are open and friendly in all of our private relations and in our public acts, and we keep strictly within the law. Most of us do this. We recognize the restraint of reverence. We are obedient to the officials, the authorities, and the laws, especially in the laws that protect the oppressed, protect the unwritten laws whose violation brings admitted shame. We respect those. We love beauty without extravagance. We love wisdom without unmanliness. We use and employ our wealth not as a means to vanity and ostentation, but we usually will use our wealth, whether that be intellectual wealth or actual physical wealth, as an opportunity for service. Most of us do this. In the old days, to acknowledge poverty was not a disgrace. The true disgrace is in making no effort to overcome and lift yourself out of poverty. The great impediment to action is the lack of full information, which is gained by rational discussion prior to any action. We have to engage in that. True patriotic Americans yield to no one in independence of spirit, versatility of accomplishment, and in the complete self-reliance in our beings. That's what it used to mean to be an American, Lou. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, I think I definitely can't argue with it. It's but what I think you're telling me or you're trying to say about this particular topic is that the president. Are you saying that the president has a lot to do with how we feel about what it means to be American?
Well, the president is sort of a rally around the flag type of individual. Usually in the United States, when we have some sort of calamity, international calamity, we rally around the president. I mean, George first Bush, 41, when we engaged in the first Iraq War, we won that within like 29 days. My squadron was actually ready to go, but it was over with. General Schwarzkopf had it over in 29 days. He had an 87% approval rating. You hear what I said? 87% approval rating. And then guess what? They didn't reelect him. Probably because of Ross Perot, but they didn't reelect him. Right. His son, in the aftermath of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, in Washington, D.C., in the Pentagon, and Pennsylvania, had a 91% approval rating. And that's unprecedented. 91% approval rating. That's because we rallied around the flag. I don't see too many people rallying around the flag that is going up Barack Obama's banner. I don't his flagpole. I don't see it that often, except for the cultural Marxists and the Muslims.
The president has to wave the flag for people to rally around it, and I think that's what we don't see. We don't see Barack Obama wave the flag, right?
I don't see him waving any flag. I see him going around the world apologizing for the hegemony of American society, and he doesn't ever talk about American exceptionalism. Trust me on this one subject. America is exceptional. I've been to many foreign countries, and I think we should take our 13, 14-year-old girls and boys and send them to some of these third world nations. I've said this before, for 6 months. Let them live there and see what it's like. And when they come back to the United States of America, they'll have a whole new mind-opening experience and a resolve for what they are blessed with in the United States of America. It is that shining hill set upon the city. I truly believe that. Let me ask this question before we go to break. Could the USA collapse due to an external threat?
You want to let's answer that when we come back from break?
Yeah, let's answer that when we come back from break.
Okay, we'll take a quick break and we'll come back and answer that question.
K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at sales@k98fm.com.
Wondering why you're up early with us on a Sunday morning making a cocktail? News lately got you drinking? Hungover from the mainstream media by Sunday? We are, and we got you covered.
We sure do. We got your hangover cure for those weekly news blues. So sit back, top off your mimosa, and add some Baileys to that coffee.
Take a match to your copy of the New York Times. Light, funny, and oh yeah, news with booze.
And a lot of laughter.
Welcome to Bloody Marys and Broadsheets.
Abolish the IRS. Take all 125,000 IRS agents and put them on our southern border.
That's us, that's right. Gotta love this American ride. Both ends of the ozone burning. Funny how the world keeps turning. Look, Mom, no hands. I love this American ride. Gotta love this American ride.
We're back, Dr. A, so we're going to answer that question.
In my humble opinion, the United States will never collapse due to an external threat. And Lord knows there's many of them out there. As you know, just this last Saturday, the cabinet of Egypt's government resigned. And there's some corruption going on there. Tremendous. You ever notice that the most unstable... Did I lose you?
You did for a second, but you came back. I'm really glad to have you back. You said, did you ever notice how?
The majority of the countries that are politically unstable have a large Muslim population in them.
Oh, yeah, I've noticed. Absolutely. I think that there's a lot of anger there in that culture, and there's a lot of very little tolerance and a whole lot of anger.
Well, that's what the Quran teaches them. You know, we have these knuckleheads in our government who are liberals and in the media and education, they want to cut them a break and tell them that these people we're Islamophobic. I'm not Islamophobic. I'm pro United States of America, and these people are anti-United States of America, and so I will always fight against them and say it like it is. Speak the truth and endure the consequences. That's what's happening right now. And that government in Egypt resigned, the cabinet resigned, because of there's some scandal going on there with corruption. But you've got some serious problems out there in the world. With now you got Syria. Putin is putting Russian troops in Syria. I think he's pro-Assad. He's got MiG-31s and Su-25s going over there and building up, a place for those guys to operate out of. And they're going to have Russian boots on the ground. And China's being emboldened in the South China Sea to take over, land grabs there within the South China Sea and building little islands. So there's lots of external threats that are out there. But I truly believe that there's enough sheepdogs in the United States of America who are armed and will stand up and fight any kind of external aggression that comes our way, and then you'll have people lined up at all ages to save this country.
Well, you talk about how crisis makes leadership. I think crisis makes, and we talked about this last week, crisis makes for sheepdogs.
It can if they step up and do it, and that's what we need. We need we're in crisis right now, Lou. And the only way that we're going to collapse is because of an internal threat, like we talked about earlier, with those treasonous activities from people that we are familiar with. As a political science professor, I've come to the conclusion that most American citizens would sooner die than to use their brain and think. And in fact, they do so. In reality, most people cannot think. And the vast majority of the remainder will not think. Those Americans who do think can't seem to do it very well. The tiny fraction of individuals who think regularly, accurately, creatively, and without self-delusion, in my humble opinion, those are the only people that really matter and who you can count on in the grand scheme of complex human relations. Now, when you look at government, I teach American government as well, in the most general terms, government consists in taking as much money as possible from one class of citizens and giving it to another class of citizens. The whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed by menacing it with an endless array of hobgoblins, most of which are imaginary hobgoblins. What do you think about that?
I think imaginary hobgoblins are a lot of... I think we've talked about that a lot of the different groups in the imaginary hobgoblins, and you think about Rahm Emanuel and never let a crisis go to waste. And most of us who know or who are skeptical of people like that would add, and don't be afraid to create one if you need to. If you look at Ferguson, that was a manufactured crisis. The narrative behind it wasn't even true. You can look at a lot of other manufactured crises that have come about during the Obama administration that were, the narrative turned out to be false. It was blown up into a much bigger situation than it ever should have been. And it's like you said earlier, it's the things that should be focused on are not. The terrorist attacks, those are swept under the rug and aren't discussed. The things that are really manufactured, like Ferguson and things like that, those are focused on. The FBI is sent out. The Justice Department is involved. There are investigations. There's now a committee looking into how the Justice Department can better regulate local police forces. And this can't be an accident.
It's none of their business. I know they want to do that because if you nationalize the police force, that's one big step into transformation to a totalitarian regime. And what's has held back these would-be tyrants in perpetuity with the United States is Second Amendment. We have the right to keep and bear arms, and you can bet I take advantage of that right, and as do many Americans in our society. There's probably 320 million people living in the United States. We probably got 300 million guns or more, and that would be a big obstacle to overcome if we rose up and fought these people tooth and nail. I think that is what's preventing. That's why they have to do it so clandestinely, Lou. And they want to do it so that one day we'll just wake up and all of a sudden we'll be a communist nation and we won't know how it happened.
And that's a wonderful point, and something that my mother taught me growing up is if you can't do it out in the open, then you probably shouldn't be doing it at all. So things that are clandestine internally are probably meant in some way. They're probably not good for us in one way or another.
I wrote an article several months ago called "Pity the People That Need Heroes," and that comes from a famous Athenian mantra: "Pity the nation that needs heroes." We have heroes everywhere. We got moms out there that are soccer moms, for lack of a better way to term it. They're heroes. They're taking care of their family. They're doing the right thing and raising their children. They're heroes in my humble opinion, but pity the nation that needs heroes, meaning we don't want to manufacture heroes. We don't need to do that. We have enough good people out there already that are leading a heroic life that are unheralded. And so that's a problem. I often think to myself, what did I do as an American to oppress people in Ferguson, Missouri, or in Baltimore, Maryland? What did I do? They would come up with something that I did, a white privilege or whatever. Stacy always talks about white privilege. I don't even know what that means.
None of us really know.
I had to fight for everything I ever earned, and you notice I used the term earned. And that's what I would do if I was ever a candidate. I'd say, look, I got to be honest with you. This politician right here, he doesn't care about you. Not one bit. He cares about himself and getting reelected. He wants you to think he cares about you. In reality, you're disgusting to him. He hates you. You're part of the mass. The mass is something that needs to be surgically removed. That's how he feels about you.
That's something else that I ran across in the Reagan quotes from 50 years ago. How he resented the fact that the Democrats referred to we the people as the masses.
Yeah.
And was really, really out there to calling them to the carpet for it. We're not the masses. We've never identified. That's not what the American people are. That's very un-American to call us the mass. We are not. We
Right.
are we the people. We are the government. And you answer to us, politicians. That's been
we
forgotten.
have this movement that's communist as well. The Young Liberty Foundation is communist. The Green Movement, the EPA movement, the Tree Huggers, whatever you want to call that. They want to bring us back to the pre-industrialized nation that we were, because they hate the United States of America the way it is. And so you have all these mantras, save the whales, save the planet. Save the planet? Are you kidding me? We can't even save ourselves most of the time. We have a hard enough problem, taking care of our families, and they're so naive to think that we can save the planet. We can't save the planet. God created the planet, and it's for Him to decide when it's the time to get rid of it. We think that removing some plastic bags from the grocery store is going to help out. That's exactly what's going on. Now, they want to save humanity. The urge to save humanity, Lou, is almost always a false face for the urge to rule over humanity. So my caution would be to the listeners, beware the leader who bangs the drum of war in order to whip us up as citizens into a patriotic fervor, if you will.
So let's talk about that, banging the drum of war. I mean, obviously, the obvious analogy would be Hitler and the Germans versus the Jews.
Exactly.
Right.
The reason that you don't have that second car or that summer home on the shores of the lake there in Austria is because these damn Jews. It's ridiculous. And now it's the reason that you don't have this, that, or the other, Mr. Person of Color, is because them white people, them white folks.
Well, and the reason that they're your neighbor or your cousin or your brother or whatever is incarcerated is because of this unjust criminal justice system and corrupt police officers. That's why they're not because they're committed crimes, not because they're carrying illegal guns, not because they're members of a gang, but because of the corruption in the police department.
You know what, Lou? There are some corrupt police officers out there. There are some corrupt basketball referees. Exactly. There are some corrupt radio talk show hosts. But 95%, like we just talked about, 95% of these people are good, honest, hardworking people, just want to take care of themselves and their families and live a good life and not harm anybody.
Right.
That's what most people are.
There are corrupt nonprofit directors. There are corrupt everything in the world that you could think of. I would put money on the fact that you will find fewer people who are corrupt in law enforcement and in the military than in any other public service where it might actually benefit them and they might actually be able to be corrupt, because you have to have a certain type of job and have something to offer to be corrupt to begin with.
Right. But, and you talked about Hitler, and he was really good. You've seen some of his fiery, ugly speeches, in my humble opinion. He was good at whipping the German citizenry up into that patriotic, nationalistic German fervor. But the problem is patriotism is a double-edged sword. It both emboldens the blood of the human beings that hear it, as it narrows their mind. So when you have a guy like Hitler that's banging the drums of war, and they have reached that fever pitch, and the citizens' blood starts to boil with hate, and their mind is now sufficiently closed, that type of leader will have no need in seizing the rights of the citizenry. Rather, that citizenry that's listening to what he's saying and has their blood boiling, infused with both fear and blinded by that nationalistic patriotism, will offer up all their rights to that leader, and gladly so. In the end, the people will lay all their liberties at the leader's feet and say to him or her, make us your slaves, but just please feed us. And that has happened many, many times in human existence, Lou.
Absolutely.
And it is happening again.
Yeah, and the Soviet Union did it with the Ukraine, right? So we starve you first, so that you're completely kind of our slave. So that when we feed you, you're attached to us. You can't live without us because no one else is going to feed you. But we have to starve you first so that you know that you need food.
We talked a little bit last week, and I think next week, or probably the week after, we're going to talk about that article I wrote called The Virtual Gulag, and we discussed this offline. I'm writing another article about Plato's allegory of the cave, and in the allegory of the cave, he basically talks about people that are chained up in this device, this medieval device, down in this deep, dark, dungeonous cave. They can't move. They can't move their legs, their feet, their arms, their bodies. They can't move their heads or their necks, and they have blinders on. All they can see is what's in front of them, and what's in front of them is a wall. Behind them is a raging fire that's providing the ambient light inside the cave, and in between the fire, that fire light, and them are people, the puppeteers, who are showing these slaves down in this cave images up on that wall that they want them to see. As the light is showing them the shadowy figures, and that's all these people see. That's it. That's their truth. That's their reality. And one day, this one individual that's chained up breaks free and looks around the cave, and he sees the light up at the top of the cave, and he crawls slowly to that light, gets to that light, and he can't look at it. It's too bright, Lou. It's too bright. I can't look. He actually goes out for a second and comes back in. It's just so bright. He goes back down into the cave and starts to tell the people what he's seen about this light. And they don't believe him, Lou. They don't believe him because he's telling them the truth. I saw this light. No, they don't believe him. What they believe is what's in front of them because that's all they know. That's all they've been raised with. That's it. That's the truth for them. That's reality. So the guy crawls back up, gets out into the light. He can't handle it. He can't take it. He voluntarily, Lou, goes back down and volunteers to be chained back up in that deep, dark, dungeonous cave. Now, here's what Plato is teaching us. The light is the truth. And human beings, most of us human beings, wouldn't recognize the truth if it slapped us in the face or know what to do with that truth if we did recognize it. Therefore, he gave us two conclusions of that. The philosophers, of which he was one conveniently, the philosophers should be the king and rule over mankind because they know what to do. They recognize the truth, the real truth, nothing but the truth, and they know what to do with the truth. But there's a two-way street to that. He also taught us that those philosophers that recognize the truth have an obligation to educate and train the other people in that society slowly, methodically, to accept and understand the truth so they can use it in their own lives as well. Too many of us, Lou, are blinded by these people, these merchants of mistruths, these Sharptons and these Jacksons, about things that go bump in the night. They want to keep their people ignorant of the real truth and afraid of these hobgoblins that are imaginary that they make up. And that's exactly what the virtual gulag is that I talked a little bit about and I wrote that article on. The virtual gulag, which is basically communist aggression using political correctness to try to mind rape people and keep people as slaves inside the virtual gulag and let them see the truth that they want them to see and nothing else. What do you think of that?
I think that's absolutely true, and when I look back on the last 30 or 40 years of history and kind of the back and forth narrative on one side versus, how horrible America is on the other side, it's almost like we've been living in a modified Skinner box for 30 or 40 years.
Skinner, I love it.
Well, seriously, it is like living in a Skinner box, and it gets worse and worse over time. It's very. I can see why people may have shut down and not listen and not pay attention. I don't get it, but I kind of get it. You know what I mean? Because it is like a Skinner box. It's like, just turn it off already.
Here's what I would have to say to some of my fellow citizens. If you love wealth or contrived security more than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the sort of animating contest of freedom, then leave. Depart from all of us in peace. Go. We ask not your counsel nor your arms. Feel free to go ahead and crouch down, bend down, and lick the hand that feeds you. May your chains of slavery in that virtual gulag or Plato's cave rest lightly upon you. And may posterity forget that you were ever even our countrymen. I will forget you because you are not my countrymen, if that's the way you believe.
A little bit of modified Sam Adams there.
Sam Adams, exactly right. Not the guy that makes the beer, but the guy that was the philosopher.
The guy that beer is named after. Yeah, absolutely. And some good beer at that, too. So, Dr. A, how about taking a little break and being back in about 2.5 minutes?
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000, my heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
Red Nation Rising brings you Town Hall Radio.
From a single tweet to 3 million a month, our community is a force to be reckoned with on social media.
So don't miss our show, Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern on K98 Talk.
Our chat room is our co-host, and you ask the question.
Join us and be heard.
So get ready to sound off on Red Nation Rising Radio. No one else is going to do it for you.
There's a wild, wild whisper blowing in the wind, calling out my name like a long lost friend.
And we're back. So you're still with us?
I'm here.
Yeah, you're still there. Okay, good deal. So you, where were we, Dr. A?
Let me talk about government. I teach American government. I like that course too. It's one of the beginning course. I like to teach the presidency and homeland security better, but this is a good course too to teach our kids. A lot of kids aren't learning the truth anymore. By the way, I think I told you this offline. One of the first things I do in class is I go up to the board and I write truth changes, and then I turn around and look at the class, see the incredulous looks on their faces. Well, what do you mean that? Well, truth changes because it's subject to human interpretation. we're talking obviously secular truth, not godly truth, but it changes me when beings interpret it. And then I give them some examples of things that were the truth that changed. 1491, the Earth was flat. Until, that Columbus guy sailed around and said, no, it's not flat, it's round. It used to be that they were talking about why is cocaine suddenly becoming the en vogue recreational use drug? And they said, well, because it's not addictive. And then they found out, no, that's not true. It's the most addictive substance on the planet. And so truth has a tendency to change because of human interpretation. If you talk about a real scientific revolution, here's what a real scientific revolution is. I'm looking in the same old familiar place, but I see something different. You make a discovery. A lot of the discoveries that happen in the world of science were by accident. They're looking the same old familiar places, and they discover something new. I mean, the greatest piece of scientific information and the field that everybody wanted to work in when they left graduate school was the theory of the motion of the planets, and everybody wanted to work in Sir Isaac Newton's his theory and in his paradigm. It was exciting. It was the truth until this little German Jewish guy came along and said, no, that's not the way it works. It's relativity. So the truth changed. When we talk about government, the government basically consists of a gang of people, a gang of men and women, exactly like you and me, Lou. Well, maybe not like you. You're a Meredith graduate. But these people in government have no special talents, none, for the business of government. They have, and by the way, what does to govern mean? I talk about this as well. It means to control. None of us want to be controlled. So why do we submit to government control? We have to have a modicum of control over our behavior when you talk about the state of nature, which your favorite Locke talked about. He was a theorist in the state of nature. Otherwise, we would kill each other. So you have to have some control. We give up some of our liberty to this government control to get benefits. And usually the benefit is safety and security and the umbrella of liberty underneath which we can do whatever we want in our lives, pursue happiness as long as we don't hurt somebody else. But today, again, the government consists of this gang of men and women who are exactly like you and me, and they have no special talents for the business of government. Do you think John McCain has a special talent for the business of government? No, he doesn't. I know the man personally. They have only a talent for getting elected and reelected and holding on to their office, their power base. Their principal device, their principal mechanism to that end is to search out groups of individuals who pant and pine for something out of society that they can't get on their own. And then these politicians promise to give it to this group if they elect them to office. Now, 9 times out of 10, that promise is worthless. It's worth absolutely nothing. It doesn't pass what I call the 30-30 test, meaning when they say it, if you get 30 seconds away from them or 30 feet away from them, it's worthless. The 10th time is made good only when these politicians loot Citizen A of his hard-earned resources and give it to redistribute it and satisfy Citizen B. In other words, our government, any government, is sort of a broker of pillage. And every election is an advance auction of the sale of those stolen goods. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. In my humble opinion, there is no room in this country for hyphenated Americanism. The absolutely certain way of bringing the nation to total destruction, again from within, or preventing all possibility of its continuing as a sovereign nation at all, would be to permit and encourage us to become this tangled web of squabbling nationalities. That would destroy us very quickly, Lou. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think if you come here to be an American. And it's interesting. You mentioned the Italians earlier. And obviously, I married an Italian, and his father was I believe, the first generation of his family born here. They kept a lot of their culture, but still became American. You don't hear them use the term Italian American. I don't hear my Irish family use the term Irish American, and some of the Irish on his side of the family are also pretty recent immigrants. A couple of generations, 2 or 3 generations back. So it doesn't make sense to me how the whole thing doesn't make sense to me, and I do think that it undermines the success of not just the people using the term, but of the country as a whole. Because the successful integration and the success of those other nationalities came about because they embraced the American spirit, they embraced the American dream, they came here for the American dream, and not just to send, money back to their country, not because they were forced to, because they couldn't get a job somewhere. Well, maybe to some extent that was true, but it was still about chasing that dream. And that's the difference. The Italians are even 1 or 2 generations in, are very American. They kept their food. They kept a lot of their textures are all the same, but they learned the language. They integrated into the society. They assimilated, if you want to call it that. They kept the best, and they even Americanized a lot of their food. So, and it's good food.
I grew up in Southern California and went to UCLA, and I learned to speak a different language. You were talking about that. I learned to speak Valley Girl language, and so should I call myself a UCLA American? I don't know. Or a Valley American? I'm not sure. I'm being facetious, obviously. But
maybe a Cali American.
A SoCal American?
Yeah, SoCal American. There we go.
I want to get serious here for a second. Am I the only guy in this country who's fed up with what's happening today inside of America? Where is the outrage? Of course, this is coming from my friend Iacocca. Where is the outrage? We, as Americans, should be screaming bloody murder. We've got a gang of clueless bozos, politicians, steering the American ship, our ship of state, right over a raging waterfall, that raging waterfall at Disneyland, I guess. We have corporate gangsters stealing us blind. We can't even clean up after a hurricane, and my house was damaged in Hurricane Katrina. And we can't even clean up after that, much less build a good hybrid car anymore. But instead of getting angry, everyone sits around and nods their heads when the politicians tell us to stay the course. Stay the course? Are you kidding me? This is America, not the Titanic. I'll give you a great soundbite, Lou. What do you think about this? Throw the bums in Congress out, all of them. What do you think about that?
I think that's great. There's a few that I might want to keep, but there's only
Who are they? Who are they?
Trey
Gowdy. I know you want to get Trump in there, but
Mark Meadows can stay.
Yeah,
Mark Meadows can stay. Jim Jordan can stay. Darrell Issa can stay, and Trey Gowdy can stay.
Okay.
So that's 4 out of what, 435?
It's 535.
535. Well, I'm sorry. That's just the House, the 435. If you want to start with the Senate, I don't know that I could come up with a senator that I would really be supportive of staying. Ted Cruz, maybe, but
you don't like Lindsey Graham?
No, not my favorite. But he's been around too long. He's got, some of them it takes them 30 minutes to catch beltway fever. Some of them it takes, 6 to 12 years for them to catch beltway fever, but they all catch it eventually.
When I was talking earlier, you might think I'm kind of a little bit PhD crazy there, that I've kind of gone off my rocker. But someone has to speak up in this country. We talked last week about the sheeps and the wolves and the sheepdogs. Somebody's got to step up. I get to the point where I hardly recognize this country anymore. The most famous business leaders in America are not the innovators, but the guys in handcuffs that are doing the perp walk on the evening news. We're fiddled basically with Barack Obama at the helm. We're fiddling around in the Middle East while it's burning, and nobody seems to really know what to do outside of him. And I do think he knows what to do. He's helping them any way he can because he's one of them. And you have this press who's waving pom-poms instead of asking the hard questions of the politicians, the candidates. I heard a candidate question the other day of Hillary Clinton, who I think is a sociopath and a pathological liar. What's your favorite ice cream? What the hell does that have to do with anything, Lou? What's your favorite ice cream, Hillary?
I can think of a few good acronyms for that, but there's no words that I can come up with that I could actually say on the air or would say on the air. That's completely ridiculous. And can I ask you a question about that?
Well, you can ask me a question, but earlier we talked about office hours with Dr. A, and you set me up because now I'm hearing people, my Twitter trolls, are saying office hours with Dr. A-hole, office hours with Dr. Arrogant. They're coming at me left and right because of you. Go ahead.
Not my fault.
Okay.
So, and trolls going to be trolls, so don't worry about the Twitter trolls. But my question is this. You talked about fiddling around in the Middle East, and you and I had a conversation where I was very upset because, I had a cousin that was MIA in Korea who was a naval aviator. You were a naval aviator. These are, and I'm not just sucking up to you, these are the best of the best of the best. They're up there with Navy SEALs. They are sending off of aircraft carriers naval aviators with fully loaded with bombs into ISIS-held areas that I'm sure they're not without some sort of anti-aircraft weaponry. And they're coming back some of them without ever dropping a bomb at all. In what world is it okay for us to put the best and brightest of our country and bravest of our country in harm's way for no reason at all?
In a war that is politically correct, run by Lyndon Baines Johnson and his Tuesday for Lunch bunch, where they decided what the targets would be that week, and of course they would go out, the A6s and A7s would go out and bomb groves of trees that had nobody in them, or in a war where most of the people don't realize they're in a war in the country that we live in right now, and the guy that is the commander-in-chief that's supposed to be directing the war only allows about 5 or 6 of those airplanes to drop their bombs during any kind of a strike, the entire day's worth of strikes, because he's one of them. He has no intention of hurting ISIS.
Well, and the evidence stacks up. So when you say he's one of them, then you mentioned that people might think you're off your rocker. Well, yeah, taken just in that instance, it might sound kind of out there, but when you stack the evidence up of what's actually been done, but then you turn around and, like you said, the media is waving their pom-poms and cheering for these airstrikes that aren't actually even taking place. So yes, there's a sortie was flown, but that doesn't mean that the jet dropped a bomb. That doesn't mean that there was ever an airstrike, and that part of the story is getting lost. And so we're all snowed by the media to think that we might actually be doing something to help the Middle East or to solve the problem, when in actuality we're not. We're just putting the bravest men in the country in harm's way for no reason.
Where are the general Pattons in our country? Where
Obama fired them all.
The Admiral Nimitz, where's MacArthur? Where are these people at? I'll give you a great example. I was in Air Wing CAG 2, Carrier Air Group 2, and that was USS Ranger before I went to the Enterprise, and we had a Carrier Air Group commander. We call him CAG. His name was Waples, John Waples. His call sign was Spine Ripper.
Oh, that's better than Winch.
Yeah, and his mantra for his air wing was this: if you have bombs left on your airplane, when you come back to this ship, pick up a heading of 270 until you run out of gas. There were no hung bombs or stuck bombs or bombs left on the bomb racks in Air Wing 2, the United States Navy, on the Ranger, which its call sign was Top Gun. There were none. You, as a naval aviator, are a weapon a weapon platform that is used by the United States people to protect the United States of America and to ensure its longevity and its freedom. That's exactly what I was and am still today. And people don't understand that.
And I want people to stop and think about, so when the argument against war is that we don't want to see any more American troops lost. But if you're going to take the troops and put them in harm's way anyway, you can't stop them from shooting. You can't tie their hands with the rules of engagement. So the idea, especially on the left, is that this president is fighting a war in a more humane way, but he's not. It's the exact opposite of that. It's completely inhumane. It's inhumane to our troops, it's inhumane to their families, and it's inhumane to the American people. And he may be, like you said, supporting who he really wants to support in doing that, which is the other side, but they're creating a narrative that this is a more humane, more global, more friendly way to do it, and that's crap.
Trust Dr. A on this one subject, okay? Barack Hussein Obama is not fighting a war. He is aiding and abetting our enemy. As such, that is heinous treason. He's committing heinous treason every single day he's allowed to be at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And the cowards in the Republican Party don't have the guts, don't have the courage or the inner fortitude to do what's right for this country because they're bought off millions of them whatever, and it would be embarrassing. They're not doing anything because of that situation right there. And we had to stop giving this man the benefit of the doubt because he had a father who was born in Kenya. We have to stop, and we have to call it for what it is.
Do you think that's why he gets the treason? Do you think that's why he gets the benefit of the doubt? I mean, you're
absolutely because we have these. Because you know what? Maybe next week we should do my commencement address, and I'll talk about that. What the liberal mindset is, and these students that emerge from college, how most of them feel. They have so much emotion, Lou. They feel so much. I've got a big heart. You got a big dumb brain is what you got, and you better learn pretty quickly to use that brain rationally and properly, or you'll be one of them. You said we don't want to have any more soldiers killed. Well, you know what? That's what the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines sign up for, to protect this country at the very cost of their own life. They will willingly give up their life to protect this country. Would you rather see some of those soccer moms we were talking about earlier taking their young kids to the soccer field in their vans? You want to see them die and have them beheaded? No, you don't.
And if
but
you're
that's
too
what's
young,
happening. That's what's going to happen in this country very soon. It's already happened. Yeah. We've had Muslims in the workplace kill innocent women. Do you remember this?
Yes, absolutely, I do. And I actually saw, I guess it was on the anniversary, she finally came out, the woman who was injured but lived, finally came out and did an interview, and she's still just completely devastated. The woman has some pretty serious PTSD from the incident. But yeah, absolutely. And here's a couple of tips. Number one, if you're too young to remember, watch Red Dawn. Number two, if you feel so strongly that you need to make the world a better place and you want to help people, volunteer. There are plenty of things that you can do to clean up your community, to help people in your community, but don't do it with your vote. Vote to make America strong. Get out into your community and help people.
You know what? What's happening right now in the country, that's not the promise of the United States of America that my great-grandparents and your great-grandparents traveled across the ocean for. And I have had enough. And that's why we started the show. That's why we're speaking out. That's why I'm writing. That's why you're doing what you're doing. We're trying to whip up some people to understand what's going on. And I've had enough. How about you?
I've totally had enough. And you talked earlier about the Republicans that are too scared to do anything, or they're bought off if they can't do anything.
I said they were cowards, and they are. I speak the truth and endure the consequences. Right. I'll go a step further. You cannot really call yourself a patriot if you are not outraged at what's happening right now with Barack Obama in the White House, with Mitch McConnell as the Senate Majority Leader, and Johnny Boehner from Ohio as the Speaker of the House. You cannot call yourself a patriot if you are not outraged by this. And this is a fight that I am ready and willing to engage in. The biggest C word, my students laugh when I say that, the biggest C word in the English language is crisis. And you know what, Lou? Leaders are made, not born. And leadership, you mentioned this earlier, leadership is honed and forged during times of crisis. It's really easy to sit there with your PhD that you got from Cornell University or wherever, with your feet up on your little desk or in the faculty lounge and talk theory.
And I'll tell
it's
you
really
right now,
to do that.
Yeah, and not everybody can do it. Great leaders are forged during crisis, but not every leader can do it. Not every leader can lead during a crisis.
It's easy to send somebody else's kids off to fight a war when you've never seen a battlefield yourself. It's another thing to lead when your world starts tumbling and crumbling down around you. Again, to reiterate, trust Dr. Ray in this one subject. Today we have an Islamo-communist sitting inside the White House at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and he is methodically trying to destroy America. I can't believe that the American people aren't seeing what Barack Obama is doing to this great nation. May God have mercy on their souls.
You know, people could make a drinking game out of our show. Every time you say Islamo-communist, they could take a drink.
How about trust Dr. Ray on this one subject?
Yes, that one too.
I need you to trust me on.
When you say either one of those things, take a drink. It's our game. Our show is a drinking game.
Speak the truth, endure the consequences. Are you going to Twitter troll me? Is that what you're getting ready to do? It sounds like it.
No, absolutely not. I might tweet that after the show, though. Our show is a drinking game. Listen to the podcast.
You're unmercifully teasing me.
Yeah,
probably.
Like a little bit.
JD and what's her name from Cornell, the Cornell chick, Stacy.
Right, we got to make the show a little fun, right? Because they're on at 11 and people are laughing like crazy, so we don't want to, be too serious and not be a little bit funny and make a few jokes. But it is a very serious topic. I mean, we're talking about serious stuff here, and the object is to wake people up and get them to
realize that the attack on America on 9/11, September 11, 2011, was the greatest surprise attack ever perpetrated on the United States. Do you even realize that? I mean, that's a huge bone for the people of the Islamic faith. They laugh in the streets and giggle and cackle. They love what happened to the United States of America, the World Trade Center, the Pentagon. That is a big kudo for them. That's exactly, and after that, we needed a strong group of leaders more than at any other time in our national history, except for right now. Right now, we need a steady hand to guide us out of the ashes because the nation still is in one hell of a mess. Here's where we stand right now. It's World War III, Lou. I told you that. I said this for 4 or 5 years. The United States is now engaged in World War III. The world is at World War III. Most of us don't know that. The Muslims know this. We are immersed in this bloody war with radical Islam, but nobody wants to accurately call it that. They're afraid to call it that. We're running up the biggest national debt and deficit in the history of the nation. We're quickly losing our industrial edge, our manufacturing edge to other countries in Asia, while our once great companies are moving all of their assets offshore. We're getting slaughtered by Obamacare and the health care costs of the Affordable Health Care Act. Gas prices at one time were skyrocketing. They're coming down now, but nobody in this country seems to have a coherent energy policy. We have enough energy, oil and gas and coal and shale in this country to be energy self-sufficient in the entire northern continent. We have enough here. We don't need to import anything from Saudi Arabia or Iran or Venezuela or anywhere. We have enough right here. We do. We just have to have the courage to go out and get it. It's waiting for us. We've got schools that are turning out to be the worst in the world. Our national borders are sieves. People, because of Barack Obama, are coming across the border every single day with impunity. And our middle class is getting squeezed every which way.
And all of those things can cause that lapse in security that we were talking about. But that last one is really almost a surrender of our sovereignty. To have open borders, you're not protecting your sovereignty at that point.
Borders, language, culture.
Yes,
and then that's the key, and we're giving up all three of those. And this is a time that just basically screams for leadership. And what did we do? In 2008, we gave the reins of the presidency and all of its political power to an Islamo-communist because we wanted to be fair, and we wanted to elect him because of his race, his half-race. We don't have time, Lou, to be fair. We need a strong, conservative, aggressive, courageous, patriotic leader. But then you look around, like we said earlier, where are they all gone? Where are all the leaders? Where have they gone? Can you answer that for me, Lou?
No, actually, I tweeted something the other day that might be a little bit of an answer to it, which is good men won't run. And I think that's a little bit of the problem that we have, is that good men won't or don't run for office like they used to. It's hard to find a good man to run.
I agree. Where are the curious men and women? Again, I go away from my sexist, chauvinist pig roots there by saying women. When I say that, if anybody's listening, they're probably going to say, well, he's just saying that because he really is a pig. He's a chauvinist pig. He's just trying to dissuade us from thinking that.
Take my word for it, people. He's not a pig.
Where are the curious, creative communicators and leaders? Where are the people of character, courage, conviction, omnipotence, and, here's a good one, common sense? Idea for socks at an airport, or to throw away my container of shampoo because it's too big. We spent billions and billions of dollars on this huge bureaucracy called the Department of Homeland Security, and all we have the courage to do is to react to things that are already occurring. Name me a leader who emerged after Katrina, or after Ground Zero, or after Waco, or after the Murrah building, when all this stuff happened. We don't have them anymore. Where have they gone? Everyone seems to be sort of hunkering down with their fingers crossed, hoping, pleading, praying that it doesn't happen again. Well, guess what, people? It's going to happen again. It's happening right now. Deal with it. Make a plan. Figure out what you're going to do the next time the wolf comes knocking hard on your door, because it's going to happen. You want to take a break?
Let's take a really quick break and let you get your breath, because you got pretty stirred up in that one right there. But it's going to be a real quick one, and we'll be right back. About a minute.
Hey everybody, this is Jason, host of According to Me. I'd like to invite you to check out my show. It's a 2-hour show that lasts 60 minutes in... listen, I hate to interrupt, but one thing I can do is read off a script. Just say, let me be clear a lot. It works. President Obama, I can handle this. It's a radio promo. I'm not green. I've done this before. Did someone say green? Now, Al Gore is here. Listen, I'm just trying to record a radio promo. Do you mind? Now, do you say good things about me on the show? No, not at all. But if it makes you feel any better, I rip on Republicans just as much. The AM radio frequencies give off very high levels of radiation. Look, my show is on the internet, which you invented. Can I just do my promo? I got a pen. I can veto that, you know. I know you got a pen. It's not a law. It's a radio promo. Listen, just listen to my show. Barack Obama and Al Gore hate it, so you're going to love it. Here's an executive order. Don't listen to his show. He doesn't like me. He's racist. And he doesn't recycle either. That's it. I'm done. It's According to Me, Wednesdays, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on K98 Talk.
Okay, so did you catch your breath there, Doc?
I did, but there's crisis situations right now that are eating away at the fabric of our great nation, and they're basically sucking the middle class dry. And I've got news for those people in Congress, that gang in Congress. We didn't elect you to sit on your rear ends and do nothing and remain silent while our democratic constitutional republic is being hijacked, and our greatness, American superiority and greatness and exceptionalism, is being replaced with mediocrity. What is everybody so afraid of, Lou? That somebody on CNN or Fox or MSNBC are going to call them some sort of a derogatory name? I get called derogatory names every single day. So give me a break. Why don't you people in Congress show some backbone and spine for a change? I honestly don't think that many of you even have a backbone. In my lifetime, I've had the privilege of living through several of America's greatest and most infamous moments. The Kennedy assassination, the Vietnam War, 70s oil crisis with the second worst president of the United States at the helm, Jimmy Carter, 9/11. I was at Waco. I was at the Murrow Building. I was at Ground Zero. So I've seen what the United States can do during times of crisis when we all recognize the severity and the actuality of the crisis. I've seen what we can do when we come together. I've learned many, many things about that situation. Here's one of them. You don't get anywhere by standing on the sidelines like a sheep, waiting for somebody else, the sheepdog, to take action. Whether it's engaging in better industry, building a better future for our children, we all have a role to play in the United States of America. The challenge that I'm throwing to all of you, throwing it in your direction right this very second, people, it's a call for action. For people who, like me, believe in America and love America. I want you to love America too and fight for longevity. It's not too late, but you know what, folks? It's getting pretty darn close. So we have to shake off all this crap that is engulfing us and go to work. Let's make those fools in Congress understand we've had enough. Make a real contribution by discussing what we've talked about here on this radio show. When I give this lecture, I tell my students, discuss this in the sorority, fraternity, when you go out at night with your boyfriend, girlfriend, your mom, your dad, discuss it. Talk about it. Find out what people care about. America's future is at stake, and it is in severe jeopardy. So here's my analysis before we close out here. There's no security for honest men and women if you don't believe that evil men and women will do all possible evil. Now, in the not too distant future of the United States of America, we are going to be forced, by the magnitude of the circumstances that are developing right now, we're going to be forced to incorporate a ruthless resolve as a country. When that fateful day finally arrives, I believe that the sheep will become sheepdogs, and the sheepdogs we have right now in America will get even stronger in their resolve, and we will begin to treat people who want to murder our citizens and who want to destroy our nation in the callous and cold-blooded fashion that they deserve to be treated. America's ultimate survival and longevity as a free country depends on us, enough of us, developing and incorporating this style of brutal behavior, at least until the internal and external threats subside, and then we can return to the normalcy of our sleeping giant syndrome once again. And I always end off by saying, let freedom ring, God help us. Can't forget God. Boy, you forget God, and you'll be a nation gone asunder. He will allow us to be turned over, as we talked about in the first hour, to our enemies. So let freedom ring, God help us, and always speak the truth and endure the consequences, like I know that you do, all the other people I'm associated with in this infancy that I'm engaging in radio talk, Andrew K., JD, Stacy, you, Jared, all of them, Rick Robinson, they all do speak the truth and endure the inevitable consequences on the social media outlets. And I appreciate you guys. You really have lit a fire in me. You have. And we need your voices on a weekly basis to keep the people hearing the truth. If you stop hearing the truth, if you repeat a lie often enough, this was what they used to talk about in all the totalitarian nations, you repeat a lie often enough, then the weak-minded individuals suddenly start believing it to be the truth. And we don't want that to happen in our society. It is happening right now on a daily basis. People start to believe the reason that you there in Ferguson or Baltimore don't have that second car or that home that you want at Lake Tahoe is because that white guy over there or that white girl.
Everything it becomes everything that someone else has, is something that you don't have. Regardless of how hard they worked for it, that's not the point. The point is that you have it, so I should have it too.
I don't care that JD drives a Porsche. I don't care. I'm happy for him. Or that Miss Stacy gets to go around all over and eat fancy meals and leaves me out. I don't care. Eventually, she's gonna buy me a dinner because Mrs. Clinton will be indicted. She will be arrested. It's gonna happen before March 21st of next year. Trust me on this one subject. Drink.
Have a drink. I hope that's true. I really do hope that's true. I want to see that happen. I'd like to see a few other people that should be indicted and prosecuted and put in jail. I'd like to see quite a few people Mitchelled.
But let me tell you something. Black lives matter. You bet they do. Absolutely do they. Hispanic lives matter. Female lives matter. Male lives matter. Americans' lives matter. If we all adopted that type of thinking and could get along the way it was intended, we would return to greatness pretty quickly. I told you Donald Trump could win the GOP nomination and become the next president of the United States. I know that you and Stacey will begrudgingly vote for him, but he could win the presidency. And despite what you think about him, and stop swinging at those pitches in the dirt, people. You've got infiltrators in Red. I don't know if Jim Lysak knows this, but you've got infiltrators in Red Nation Rising. You've got infiltrators in the conservative Facebook group. You've got infiltrators in Friends of Abe in Hollywood, which I'm part of. You've got people that infiltrate and are they want to give you something else to look at other than the things that are really important. They want to make you swing at those pitches in the dirt, because if you're swinging at the pitches in the dirt, you're not really paying attention to the ones that are in the strike zone, the ones that really matter.
Exactly.
To use the baseball analogy, you know.
Yeah, but it's a great analogy, and it's that's a lot of what they do, and there are two. We talked about Twitter. There are two types of conservatives on Twitter: real conservatives and liberals posing as conservatives. And I mean, we see them all the time, and it's pretty obvious. And there's probably actually a couple more types, but they will try to get you to swing at some stupid pitch in the dirt that doesn't have anything to do with what you're talking about. And it's pretty obvious, and you just have to not do that. You just have to not do that. Stay on topic and ignore them.
Speaking of pitches in the dirt, since you and Stacey are so adamant about tweeting sort of derogatory tweets about Donald Trump, am I being too harsh on that?
No, they're truthful. They are true. They are not derogatory. They're truthful. Well, here's the thing. I believe that in this country, and thank God for the GOP field. I love it that there's so many of them. I don't care what anybody says, because it proves that anyone can run for president in this country. You might not win, but you can run. However, especially when you're someone like Donald Trump with all your resources, you throw your hat in the ring and you take what you get. And if you don't like it, that's too bad. So
I agree. He was upset after the first GOP debate because of, and I think he kind of was the catalyst that forced Megyn Kelly to go on a little bit of hiatus for a week. And I told you that after that was done, I didn't care for a couple of her questions. I didn't. But I defended her on Twitter. I said Megyn did okay. She did all right.
She did the same thing with him that she does with everybody else that she's ever interviewed, every other time I've ever seen her on camera. And this is my field, so I pay attention. She's no different with him than she is. She might actually on her show be a little more favorable toward him than some others, or than some might expect her to be. But she treated him the exact same way that she does anyone, and that's my point. You have to be willing to take it.
All of them have to. Can you imagine? Let's do an analogy here. What do you think is the difference qualitatively and quantitatively in the stresses that they're feeling by having to answer some of these knucklehead questions, these gotcha questions, as opposed to the stress that they'll have to face as commander-in-chief and president in the White House.
Minimal.
It's not close.
Minimal, but because that's why I believe there is no such thing as a gotcha question when you're running for president. They, A, are all gotcha questions. B, none of them are gotcha questions. They're questions you should be willing and able to answer as a candidate for president. So
I enjoy listening to almost every one of them. Now there's 16 left. I like Rick Perry too. I like listening to them. To me, most of them come off as being genuine, and they don't appear to be like Barack Obama, that they can only speak if they got the words in front of them on a teleprompter. That they can speak off the cuff, and they come off as sounding articulate and educated, sincere. And I think once we get into the meat of the debate season, which we're not there yet, and we have one of these every couple of weeks, we're going to hear them talk about the issues, play off of one another, and we're going to be able to do a vetting process. And while they're all very capable, we're going to be able to, as individuals, weed out the ones that we think are not quite up to what we want as a man or a woman in the White House, and then narrow it down the field to 4 or 5 or 6, and then 2 or 3 or 4, and then eventually down to the final 2, and then the final 1. That's going to happen, but it does take a slow process to do that, the vetting process. That's what the entire primary and caucus season and the debate season is all about.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good thing. It's the way that it's supposed to work. So we got 1 minute for you to tease next week's topic.
Well, we're going to talk basically what we were discussing right now, and it's an article I wrote, a few weeks ago called The Invisible Primary, and it's something that is happening right now, and you don't get to see it, but I see it all the time. If we educate people to understand what's going on and listen for these buzzwords that are being said and how the candidates talk and react to things that are happening in their personal political context, you're going to know what's happening. Why the invisible primary is actually up and running, has been for a long time, and it's something that the establishment in both parties wants to bring to fruition, and they're just playing the game with us, making us think we're involved. I don't care who votes on it, Lou. If I get to decide what you vote on, I win.
I guess that's true. I never make a decision this early. I'm not making a decision this early now. I'm looking forward to the way it plays out. Because, again, I love it that there are so many candidates on the right. There are so many choices on the right.
You're in South Carolina. You want Lindsey Graham. You know you do. Don't lie to me.
I'm in North Carolina, and stop acting like they're the same. They're not. Two totally different states. All right. So it's time to say goodbye. And
speak the truth and endure the consequences, people. Stand up and be a sheepdog, not a sheep.
There you go. And we'll be here next Sunday, 3 p.m., to talk about the primary and the debate and, what the choices are in that invisible primary. And I think you're really going to enlighten some people with that next week.
Very good.
Very good. All right. We'll see you guys next week right here on K98 Talk. Thanks for being with us today.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
It got up to like $68,000. My heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.